host for today, and I think today I will be taking you through the core component of the Microsoft security solution. So I'm just going to give you a really little bit of background about myself and what I do here. My name is Oladele Soares. I'm a senior cloud security manager here in the UK. I've been within the security space for over 7 to 8 years now, but predominantly over 10 years in IT. These are some of the certificates I've managed to acquire over the period of time. I'm currently sitting for CCSP and of course CISSP as part of my security strategy. What do I like to do? I like to play football. You know what? Let me just, so you can put the face to the name, yeah? So, so what do I like to do? I like to play football. I like to spend time on my computer as much as I can. And of course, do a few things here and there. My expectation for this presentation or this course today is to ensure that I empower people as much as possible to understand some of the core components of Microsoft security stack as such. So I would ensure that the training is very, if possible, we can have conversation here and there, but the chat is open, so you can always ask your question in the chat. One other thing is that if you think I'm too fast, let me know. If you think I'm too slow, better for us. If you're not sure about anything, don't interrupt the call. You can drop your message in the chat, and then someone is going to probably moderate and respond to that. And yeah, I will probably check from time to time. And that's about it really. Just before we start, because we are getting to the fundamentals of the Microsoft security stack, I would like to know my crowd so that that allows me to plan the kind of information I would be sharing today and as such. Because one of the most important things that I do in my training is to ensure that people follow exactly with me. So just out of interest, in the chat, if you could just if you are new to IT, you can give like a thumbs down. And if you have been within the IT space or you are familiar with the Microsoft security stack, you can give a thumbs up. If you could just do that for about 1 to 2 minutes so you can understand the crowd that we've got at the moment. You could just give a thumbs up and thumbs down so we can understand the numbers of people that we're dealing with in terms of the skill sets. Okay. We've got one person who's okay. We've got 2 people. If you are new, just a thumbs down. If you're new to IT. Okay. We've got 3. I just need about maybe 10 people to just give so we know exactly where we need to start. So I don't start speaking technical jargons and you don't understand. So we've got 2 minutes to do that. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's good. Let's go on. That's good. Okay. Okay. So it looks like we have a mixed match of different people with different skill sets. So we will try as much as possible to make things a lot simpler. All right. Any question from what I've mentioned to you to this point? Any question whatsoever? Okay, cool.
So I think Dele, we have like 3 people's hands off. Maybe they want to ask question. Do you want to take the question now?
Yeah, that's fine. I think I was thinking the hands were more up because they trying
to hands to
yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. So today we'll be looking at the core Microsoft security platform. However, there's a fundamental things that we would expect to have known by now. But if you don't, that's fine. Today we are not talking about anything technical, just for you to get familiar with some of this product stack. So I'll tell you some prerequisites that you need to actually do better in this training as you progress. Number one thing is the fundamentals in and if you have a note, just take it down. Fundamentals in networking, fundamentals in possibly IAMs, fundamentals in basic IT computing, and then maybe fundamentals in basic security as such. So this would then allow you to uplift your understanding in whatever we're going to be discussing. So today we are talking about possibly about 5 different Microsoft security tools or stack, as I'll call it, but it's an encyclopedia of different products coming together to do something. But before we move on, I want to believe that we understand that the core focus is security. So there are some standards that we need to first understand. So there's something we call CIA triad, which is CIA triad. It's basically confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And that should be the forefront or like a cap that every security person would have to wear. And what do you mean by CIA triad? C for the confidentiality mean that the information is confidential. I for which means that integrity with the information has not been compromised. Then A, which is availability, which means that the information is available for whoever needs it. And my mentor used to say something then like one of the most secure system in the world is not the one that anyone can use. And when you can't use it, it's rendered useless. So I want us to start thinking about what we're going to be seeing today as that CI triad and looking at how these tools that I'm going to be showing you would help us understand that core principle of cybersecurity. So first things first, I'll be talking about identity and network access, which sits within a Microsoft product called Entra. A gentleman spoke to us last week about Microsoft Entra, and I think he was able to demystify some of the core components of Entra, what it does. Today I'm going to be showing what the portal looks like, and of course try to touch on a slightly bit areas of what Entra does. But before then, it's important to understand different segment of the Microsoft ecosystem in terms of how it works. So I have a very nice diagram for us here before I go into the tenancy. So we're going to be looking at identity and access management, which is the Entra side of things. We're going to be looking at threat protection with SDR, which is the Microsoft Defender suite side of things. We'll be looking at stuff around what we call Microsoft Sentinel. Sentinel basically is just, it makes sense for us to have different security products doing different things, but it also makes sense for us to be able to correlate those information into one single portal where we can then do our response and stuff, We're also going to be looking at stuff around data security, which sits with Microsoft Purview, and then we'll be looking at endpoint management, which sits with Intune. I know some of us in this course start thinking that this guy is saying so much buzzwords and it's not making sense. Don't worry, it's all going to be demystified. I promise you that. So far, so good. If you feel like I've lost you, can you give a thumbs down? If you think like you are following, can you give a thumbs up? Just to ensure that my crowd are following. Okay. I mean, if you go about maybe 50%, that's fine. Other people are going to catch up as we move on. Okay, cool. I like people that, yeah, I understand you probably, if you are lost, it's fine. We would find you, that's fine. But I want you to do something for me. Ensure you have a note taker or a pen or a paper. Just write down these things that you can see on the screen. Just write it somewhere where you can refer to, and then I will start making references to them as I'm moving on stuff. So the first thing I'm going to be taking you is the Microsoft Entra side of things, showing the portal, showing what it does, and all this nice stuff. But before then, let's look at what the product looks like and how it's been interconnected. I have a diagram here, which shows the entire Microsoft security portfolio. And one thing that I want you to take away from here really is Microsoft has a connected ecosystem of different security products doing a particular thing, ensuring that there's security from start to finish, whether you're looking at it from your cloud platform, AWS, Azure, Google Suite, whatever, or whether you're looking at it from like your mobile device platform side of things, maybe your mobile phone, your laptops, all of this nice stuff. Or you're looking at it from a data conversation, maybe your sensitive information, your system information, your crown jewels. We are looking at it from even from a network perspective. Microsoft is trying to build security around all of this, and then that led us to a conversation that is now a big principle for us in security, which is called zero trust. Zero trust architecture or zero trust model. Now, you cannot implement anything in Microsoft security stack without understanding what I've just mentioned, the zero trust model or zero trust architecture. For some of us that have already in IT before, we understand that back in the days, we used to have people coming to the office, connect to the domain. From the domain, you can access anything over the internet and all of this nice stuff. And if you're working from home, you have to deploy like a VPN to your computer, and then you then be able to connect to the infrastructure on premises. But over time, threat actors were becoming very smart to actually demystify this connectivity. So they then when they break into our systems, they compromise our domain controllers, they they take over our infrastructure, and then they ask for ransom, which is basically an example of ransomware attack and stuff. So as part of the Microsoft strategy, or not Microsoft strategy technically, because all products are now adopting the zero trust model. There's something there, the zero trust model was brought in. And the zero trust model is basically a model that allows us to not trust anything by design. So think about zero trust as everybody that needs to come into the business today must go through some level of authentication. We must show that you are who you are before we can access any of our infrastructure. Think about it that way. So a good example would be you're going into the bank or you're going into your office, you must show your ID card to say I work here. And the guys at the gate will have to scan your ID card to be sure that you work here for real. So the same principle does apply across all of this nice stuff. But let's not divert or digress from the subject matter. We are talking about Microsoft product, but we can't really speak about the product as such without describing some of the way the product works and kind of intertwines together. Have I confused anybody in this regard? Okay, cool. I believe people are following. So, zero trust model. If you do not pick anything from this call, pick this thing, because this will be your foundation build block of implementing the Microsoft solution, because it's like a principle, like a guideline. Because I am an architect, we work with guidelines, we work with principles and all this nice stuff. And the way it works really is you need to understand it. And it's very simple. In Zero Trust model Microsoft, we are looking at three things. Verification explicitly, verifying that we are who you are. So this verification comes from different sources, as an identity, as an access to data, as an endpoint, or as even on the network side of things. You are continuously evaluating that communication to the resources. When I mean resources, I mean network communication, data access, API communication, and all this nice stuff. These are all resources as such. So for every attempt to access anything, if you want to speak, you can just raise up your hand. You don't have to come up here to be rude. Can we get it? Thank you. So you have to verify who you are. And from what you can see on the screen, you can see a strong identity request. So a good example is multi-factor authentication. I'm sure all of us, we have banks app that you have to put in a PIN code before you access your bank card. You have to scan your facial recognition. You have to use your fingerprint and stuff like that. That's an example of a verification explicitly. And basically, it's just a simple 2FA multi-factor authentication that you could have. And we've gone back traditional username and password these days. Everyone now goes through 2FA, and that's just example. The other example is least privilege access. Let's think about, as we're on this call now, let's imagine that everybody can share their screen at the same time. Would that cause a bit of chaos? Because, for example, St. Charles or Fakayo Ajayi is able to share his screen. I'm supposed to share my screen. I'm also talking at the same time.
Hello, we can't see your screen. We can't hear you. I don't know if I'm the only one. Anyone there?
Same here, sir. I can't
Is
see
it not-
screen.
Yeah, it's
It's
all
network.
of us.
It's
I think it's
network.
from
Same here
Yeah,
too.
we'll come
I think
back.
it is network.
We'll come back.
Yeah, the same
Maybe it's
thing.
network.
It's probably network.
You can. Okay. Oh, it's still there.
Hello.
You will join back. We'll join back just so
Can't
that.
hear, can't hear and
Okay.
can't listen.
Yeah, sorry guys, can you see the screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes, we can.
don't know what happened. Sorry about that. Where did you miss me in terms of were you able to see the screen from start, or was it just now?
Some minutes
We could see it
ago.
from start,
Okay.
but like
So
a minute ago, we just couldn't see.
When you're talking about two-factor authenticator.
okay, cool. So we're still on track then. So I was just trying to trying to explain that as part of the principle, we need to understand these terms on everything we're configuring within the Microsoft M365 security space. And as such, not just Microsoft really, because the zero strategy is all over the entire digital ecosystem anyway. So we verify explicitly. A good example is confirming that you're who you are with two-factor, like you rightly said, so that even if a threat actor gets a hold of your credentials, they have to you have to either go through a two-factor with something you are or something something you have. Something you have could be your fingerprints. Everyone has one single fingerprint in the world. So that means that no one can really impersonate as such. Your retina, everyone has a single retina in the world. No, that means that no one can really use your facial ID. Your 2FA, for threat actors to be able to steal that means that they have to be on your 2FA system, which is your phone. Of course, we've got some situation in recent time where threat actors are stealing tokens and credentials and stuff to bypass 2FA, but we'll talk about that in more technical conversation. The other one I was giving example is the least privileged access. Think about this, a good use case. Let's imagine that you work in an environment where everybody can go into the server room, or everybody can go into the medical laboratory. Everybody, including the cleaner, they can go in there. That means that someone can potentially go and mix up things and then cause a chaos. So the same thing is also applicable in Microsoft Zero Trust, which means that you are giving least privilege access to people based on what they need to do. And that allows you to cut down what we call blast radius. Because in an event where someone gets compromised, for example, a global admin, as we call them in Microsoft, but at the point where they got compromised, they were never a global admin. the attack chain of the threat actors is cut short because they can't go further than what that user can see as a standard user. So least privilege is one. And the last one is the assumption of breach. So as part of security strategy, a thing security person should assume breach at every instance. But for you to assume breach, you must have specific information feeding into your security tool. So a good example is possibly getting number of logs ingested into your SIM tool like Sentinel, or having some automated responses or some attack surface reduction policies in place just to ensure that you are thinking ahead of the threat actors. So as such, this principle is what is going to guide in the entire thing we're going to be speaking to this, because I'll be making references to things like, oh, this is where you can set up multi-factor authentication. This is where you can implement multiple authentication policies. This is where you can implement what we call the least privilege access. This is the SIM solution. This is the SDR. This is that. This is that. So I want us to take this information, because I want us to take this information as our principle or go-to Bible that's going to guide all of what we're going to be saying today, because it's the fundamentals of modern security related to identity as the new firewall. Does that make sense, guys? Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any question, please put in the chat. I will try to attend to as such.
Yes.
Okay. Now we've described a few things. Let's do a deep dive into what, first and foremost, the first part we saw here. So I want to, so two things here, two assignments for you guys. The first assignment, take a screenshot of this, because we're going to be speaking on this. And then we will then be tying the portfolio into the Microsoft Zero Trust architecture or strategy. So by the time we get into the portal, we can see things and they move around and all of this nice stuff. Does that make sense?
So, yes. Sorry, please, can you bring back the screen again? We didn't get
Go back.
screenshot.
Okay. So you take a screenshot of this. Take a screenshot of this. What you have in this 4-line is a gigantic integrated set of products. We would say a lot that we might not be able to finish today, but take a screenshot of this. This would help us, ensuring that we align with the delivery. Do you have the screenshot now?
Is it just me?
Yes, we do.
No.
Yes,
the screenshot.
Yes.
Okay. Someone had the question in the chat. What does PIM means and all of this nice stuff? If we can please put the questions. I don't know if I have a moderator here that can just put these questions as I said, can attend to them as we move forward, so we don't lose the track of the flow. Thank you. I will come back to those questions. Now, the first part is we are looking at the identity and network access, which is Entra. On the 6th slide here, this is what encompasses the entire Microsoft Entra suite. We are going to be looking at things like managing users. You can't see my screen. Is that the same for everyone?
No,
I can see your screen.
No, I can see.
Maybe the
person should rejoin.
Maybe the person's network is lagging. The person
Yeah,
is
sorry.
not correct.
Sorry about that. Okay, let's see. Let me know. Let's prepare from the slides. So I think it's a lot bigger for you guys now, isn't it? Okay. So the first thing is Entra. What does Entra encompass? We're going to be looking at users. We're going to be looking at devices, application, a bit of Active Directory. I'll explain some of this in details as we move in there. We're going to be looking at things around multi-cloud, the new big thing in the house, AI, M365, and legacy application. But at the end of the day, think of Entra as your SaaS identity and access management platform. When I say identity and access management, it's basically users, groups, and computers as we do on premises. Sorry, user, group, computer, and network as we do on premises. But think about it as all of these things have now been shifted from having to traditionally manage them within your environment and then push it down to the cloud. Now, leaving that responsibility to Microsoft to manage for you, all we are basically doing is we just have a subscription model, same as you have your Netflix, SoundCloud, and all those nice stuff. You pay for the service and use them, but somebody needs to manage them. So in the cloud, this is your responsibility to manage the actual usability of the system and not the infrastructure as such. So within Entra, we have quite a lot of things we're going to be looking at. I think the very first one is let's navigate to the Entra portal, and I'm going to be explaining what that looks like here. So let's move this aside. Let's go down here. Let's minimize this page. And then I'm going to bring up another page here quickly. That's okay. If I'm too fast, let me know, just to ensure that people are following. So let's go down here. So the URL to navigate to Entra is entra.microsoft.com. All Microsoft products that we're going to be looking at today is going to
single thing.
Oh, you can't see my screen, can you? Okay, let me share a different side to it. Let's share entire screen. I'm going to be sharing the screen. Can you see my screen now? You still can't see my screen? Oh.
It's up now. Your screen is up now.
Your screen is up, sir.
You can see it,
There
right?
you go.
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool.
Screen is up. Screen is up.
Oh, so let's navigate to Microsoft Entra tenancy. It's the URL is entra.microsoft.com. You can see I'm going through multi-factor authentication. This goes back to our initial conversation. Verified explicitly. I'm being verified to confirm that I am who I am, and then I'm just going to go on my phone. I will type in that two-factor authentication that we've got here, 42. Let me see if I can show you guys what I'm seeing so you probably understand what I'm going through. So as you can see, I'm trying to activate my 2FA with you guys. So I've got 42 there, so I'm just going to type in 42, and then I'm just going to scan my face, and voila, I'm able to log in. So that simple use case is me verifying explicitly, and I'm trying to authenticate into Entra. Does that make sense, guys?
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes,
I'm
Yes, it does.
in Entra now. Cool, nice, wonderful platform. As you can see, everything in Microsoft, I'll tell you for a fact, all of the Microsoft product, the functionalities are always on the left. So that's the first thing you need to know. So let's close some pins so it's easier for us to understand. So the navigation are always on the left. The words or the particular product as such or whatever you're working with as English, normal English explanation. So there's no there isn't any, I would say, any kind of lingo to Microsoft as such, if that makes sense. There isn't any lingo to Microsoft as such. So most times what you see is what is called. A good example is high privilege role assignment. It means someone that needs to be assigned a high privilege role, whatever it is. So the reason I'm saying this is that I don't want you to overthink some of the technical jargons and then forget that it's just simple English. Does that make sense, guys? Does that make sense? Have I
Yes,
lost
sir.
any?
Yes.
Good stuff.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
Sorry, have you got a question for me?
No,
You can go.
Okay, cool. So, quick question, guys. On the left, we have everything that we need to do within Entra. First and foremost, the first thing you see is the home page. This home page houses, I would probably say like a I would say most likely like an overview of the tenant itself. You know, you've got the tenant ID, you've got the domain name, you've got the user profile that is signed in, you've got information about high-risk users, tenant status, identity secure score, and all those nice stuff. This is what the tenant looks like. You can also, you know, make some shortcuts here and there for things that are of interest to you as an admin. You know, when you start working in this environment, you realize that you have so much things to do, so you need to make some things available to you, as you can see. Luckily, you know, not to brag, but I have played around this for a long period of time. I've broken my tenant, so I've managed to secure my Entra environment with about 95%, you know. Some organization would still be at maybe 50, 60, 70 as such, because this thing takes a lot of time to implement. But at the end of the day, really, you can see an overview of what the tenant looks like from an Entra perspective. Now, on the left, we've got the favorites. As is, what this means basically is that if I'm interested in anything as such, I'll just click on this star sign and it's going to add it to my favorite. So let's say, for example, someone that manages users in my organization, you know, so I really would spend a lot of time coming down here. So I can just favorite it, favorite this. And I go to my favorite, I can see them in there. So it allows me to group whatever interaction I've got within the portal. But that's just basic navigation and stuff. You could also see that there are a lot of drop downs. So these arrows are just there to tell you that there are more information to what you're looking for. So basically, you can have multiple drop downs for multiple things. And as such, you can see that I've got loads of drop downs, as the case may be. So I can navigate across the entire portal. But one thing is important. We are not digressing from what we intend to see within Entra, which is basically seeing Entra as an identity and access management security platform. Now, some of us, we finish this training and see like, you know what, maybe I'm interested in infrastructure and maybe I don't want to be a full security person, or maybe I'm interested in security, or I don't want to be an infrastructure person, but I want to show us one thing quickly, if that's fine. I'm going to look at it, cyber security, and this is just this is just something that I think might be useful for us, so that you can have an idea of the things that you can do with all of these tools when you land yourself a role or something. Cyber security, I think probably spider. Oh, I think of what it's called. No. I'm trying to, yeah, this is it. Now, I just want us to look at this diagram here. I'll try to zoom it as such so that, let me see if I can zoom this a little bit. I'm not digressing, I'm going somewhere, just follow me. So within the cybersecurity space, we've got all of these connecting things within every security product, whether it's Microsoft, whatever I call it. But IAMS, somewhere here, I think it's somewhere here, sits in under security architecture. You've got access control, you've got this, you've got that. So I want us to start thinking that from the Entra portal that I've just showed us, for example, there's a lot of things that you can do as an SME within the space. Do you get what I mean? So this allows you to start thinking that within Entra, what can I do? I can do access control. I can manage users. I can manage cloud security. I can manage privilege management. I can do this, I can do that. So that allows you to start understanding that within this simple Entra portal, You can be an expert in specific areas or in multiple areas that allows you to, that increases your chance of getting jobs and whatnot if you want to. So it's always important that you're not learning this to be master of all of it, but you're learning this because at some point you would need feeding information to help you excel wherever you decide. So within Entra, we've got the Entra ID, we've got identity protection, we've got identity governance, we've got verified identity, we've got permission management and global access. Now, Entra ID itself is basically the identity and access management platform for Microsoft Cloud identity and access management tool. Underneath it, you can manage your users. Basically, as we are all on this call, let's imagine that we are an organization. Let's imagine that we've got a CEO, a CFO, a this and that. Someone needs to manage all of us. And managing us means that someone needs to give us, first and foremost, our username and password. That allows us to access our email, our SharePoint site, our devices, and all of this nice stuff. Where do we manage that? We manage it within the user space. So basically, a quick example is I want to create a user. You can see just at the bottom, it gives you a description of what it is. Create a new internal user in your organization, which means that, let's say for tomorrow we become an organization, we're going to create users using this platform. This is how we're going to go about it. In instances where you are also collaborating with external users, you can also do that as well, which means that it is very cross-platform oriented, which means that you can bring people in as guests and all of this nice stuff in your organization to collaborate with you on different processes. But that's not important. That's not really important to us as a security person. We are more focused on the security side of things. So there are specific things that we need to look out for. Within Entra, from a security offering, we are looking at things like the authentication methods, or looking at things like the conditional access, or looking at things like the identity protection. We are looking at, so for example, now we're looking at conditional access. Conditional access, let me just take it slightly backward. When users are being created, there is also a need to have specific set of groups assigned to them, specific set of devices assigned to them, specific set of application assigned to them. So a good example will be, you think about, I want us to go into the chat now. As a user that has just gotten a job in an organization, what would you expect the organization to give to you for you to do your job properly? If you could just put that in the chat. So the question is, as a user that has just been onboarded to start as maybe an IT person, what would you expect the organization to give to you as for you to start? So someone said username and password. Username and password to what? Somebody said laptop. So when they give the laptop, what would you use the laptop for? Okay. 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 Good. 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 Okay. Should I tell you the answer? So someone is close to the answer there. So the answer is, they give you a laptop, they give you a user, they add it to your group, they assign you an application, they give you a device, and they allow you access the corporate data. But those 4 things would not happen if we don't have Entra in there.
I never know. Why they ask?
Sorry, can you just mute? Do you want to mute yourself if you want to speak? Thank you. So they give you all of these things, but those 4 things, your laptop, your username and password, access to application, access to email, access to documents within the organization, would not happen without having Entra. So think about Entra or your Active Directory as the backbone of your entire organization process. Now, let's take up our security platform. So let's take our security cap on. Let's imagine that everybody can access anything. What do you think is going to happen in the organization? If you want to put something in the chat. So let's imagine that anybody can access anything in the organization. So you can easily access your CEO salary. What do you think is going to happen in the organization?
Hello. That information threat, data threat.
No. Just type. You don't have to speak. Just type.
Not saying anything. She's just saying hello, man. Maybe she's still inside. She's still inside.
Please, do you want to mute yourself if that's okay? Somebody said data breach, disaster risk, chaos, blah 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 blah. That's good. Somebody said security risk, disaster, insider threats. Cool. Now, let's now, based on what we've now understood, that if everybody have access to everything in the organization, there will be threats. Let's then think of what we need to do to reduce access to things. That is where the roles and admin comes in. Now, roles and admin allows you to grant fine access to users based on the things that they need to do. So everybody's not going to be a security admin. Everybody's not going to be an application admin. Everybody's not going to be an infrastructure admin or whatever. Everybody's not going to be a global admin, exchange admin, and the likes. So defining the roles allowed you to create what we call that least privilege access that we spoke about initially in our zero trust conversation. So that's already been established. Now let's not imagine that everybody can bring their laptop to work and then just connect to our SharePoint and OneDrive environment. What do you think is going to happen if everybody brings their laptop to work? If you want to drop something in the chat. Somebody said there will not be accountability. Okay, somebody said BRD policy. Okay, data theft. Okay, cool. Now, virus. Yep, we're getting there. Okay, cool. So that means that the data theft one is the most important part. That means that someone can connect to your environment and then begin to download your sensitive data, your corporate data. And then that brings me to a conversation about condition access policy. So you can set conditions based on different user personnel and use case, so that you can say if this person is not coming from a corporate device, you should block the access, you should require multi-factor authentication, you should do this, you should do that. So that is the work of conditional access, and it's a very, very important tool within the Microsoft security stack that allows you to manage that zero trust architecture. Don't forget, what we are looking after is the zero trust architecture. Now, the last use case, let's imagine that we are only required to authenticate using our username and password. What do you think is going to happen? I'm waiting. So let's imagine that we do not have 2FA. Cool. Somebody said compromise. Who else? Okay. Somebody said anyone can sign in on behalf of the shared account. So we said, yeah, people can have access to document it, easy data breach and stuff. That then brings me to what we call the authentication methods. Now, because of the fact that authentication using 2FA is now becoming what we call the least privilege in our zero trust architecture, we need to verify explicitly. And one of the reasons why we need to verify explicitly is to require us to provide their multi-factor authentication. So you can now start seeing the importance of Entra within the Microsoft security stack, because it kind of handles not just the user accesses, it also manages the the identity-related risk that we would probably see in the future, and so on and so forth. So, and that's it really. These are the kind of things that you need to look at. So we've spoken about a few things here. Spoken about the roles and admins. We've spoken about the conditional access that manages access to resources based on different user persona or use case or risk level. We've spoken about multi-factor authentication from the authentication methods that allows you to, ensure that users go through that two-factor bit. And there are a couple of authentication method that we've got, that Microsoft recommends. We've got the passkeys, we've got the Microsoft Authenticator Hub, we've got SMS, temporary pass, and all those nice stuff. I don't want to go into deep conversation of some of these things because probably going to waste a lot of time. But what I want us to start thinking of is how we've been able to marry the information around zero trust to how Entra will function as a solution for an identity and access management. So on this note, there's a whole lot we would have loved to cover, but Entra is a topic that you probably want to speak for about 6 or 7 weeks if you wanted to demystify each individual component of Entra. Any question before I move to a different platform? Any question?
Sorry, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Sorry, I
Sure.
have a question.
Yep,
So,
sure.
I just want to ask, you logging into the Microsoft Entra ID application, is it a free access something? Because I saw you using your multi-factor authentication. Is it that's your work app or something? Like people like us now, how can we work on the app? Maybe after the meeting, can we log in? Do we have maybe a free login ID so that we can also text what you have been teaching us in class? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm sure Microsoft do offer some trial tenants, but I'm not what the things I think in the chat, someone dropped the activation of those trial tenant, and I think I would advise that maybe we can have a session on how to get people with trial tenants. So there's there's a trial tenant, it only lasts for a couple of days. This I think a week, a month now. But yeah, there are trial tenant, but there's also paid for tenants. So if these are kind of the investment that you might want to make to say, no, I want to subscribe for a year and just have a single Microsoft tenancy and then pay for it so that you can then test all of this nice stuff. But yeah, they are trial tenant, but I think Microsoft is kind of cracking down on that, if that makes sense. Any other question, guys? I'm trying to ensure that we meet up with time. Any other question, guys? If you have a few.
Let me add to that. So I'm going to post a link in the chat. There was a session we had last year for M3 community to create a trial environment. I just wanted to watch the video. However, maybe probably next week Saturday, I'm going to walk us through how you can create your own environment for you to practice as well. But I'll drop the video, however, so that you can just look into the video to have an idea of how you can create your own environment.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that one. Let me know if you can set the presentation slides again, or it's gone. Or what can you say?
Yes, can see presentation slides.
Okay, so we've looked at Entra in a very, very, I would say, this is the shortest I've discussed Entra because that's used to be one of my sweet spots in terms of Microsoft security stack. Hopefully, we would get to meet again in a technical conversation where I would show you and demonstrate you real life use cases and implementation. The core things we looked at within Entra, we looked at actually, I'm sorry I didn't mention this to you. Previously, we used to call it Azure AD. And for the word AD here means Active Directory. And Active Directory basically is just basically to ensure that we manage users, groups, and computers. So the same thing Entra is doing, the same use case we've explained in terms of people onboarding the day, giving them username and password, giving them access to the application, endpoint devices, data and whatnot. That's the same thing Entra does. So it's just the cloud native version of the on-premises. You can have existence both on-prem and in the cloud. We'll discuss that in details, but I think that might be slightly too, because the whole concept of this conversation is just to show you the product, not to go into technical conversation. But we've looked at Entra, AD, we've looked at conditional access. We did look at identity protection, but that also falls under conditional access. But these are like the core services that you probably want to be looking at. We've spoken about inviting guest users, and that's basically stuff around B2C, B2B, and all this nice stuff. We did look at access review, but I would just like you to take a note of this. You would get the exposure as you move on, because there's a whole lot that you would revisit in this. So if I were you, I'd probably take a screenshot of some of the slides and not the portal. The slides has more information than the portal as such. But when you get into the technical conversation, the portal has more information than the slides. So take the slides as such. We didn't speak about internet access or private access. I think that might be slightly too deep for this conversation, but I just put it there. But basically, what that does is, I'm sure all of us understand, knows what a VPN is. And I'm sure we understand that previously, when we want to access resources on premises, we would have to tunnel through a VPN or be in the environment. So Microsoft has now actually created what we call like a lightweight secure service edge, same as product like Netscope and the likes, to allow you to tunnel into your environment in a secure manner, because you're able to carry out things like a multi-factor authentication, session control. And at the end of the day, all of these things they were speaking about is still sitting under zero trust strategy, because the whole idea of this is that people are not accessing what they are not supposed to access. People are performing verification explicitly. And of course, we are assuming breach at every instance. Any question, folks? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, any question?
I have a question.
Yes, go for it.
How does this interface with privacy tools and concerns?
I'm not sure I get your question. What's the question? Do you want to know how does what?
Microsoft Entra. If one works in a privacy space, how does it have any features that help a professional working on privacy to deploy it to protect data, privacy data?
Okay, got you. So Entra is a native identity and access management product. It only looks after identity and access management. We are talking about compliance, data protection, and all of this nice stuff. That sits within a product we're going to be looking at, which is called Purview. So you can have stuff around data lifecycle management, compliance manager. You can have stuff around subject rights, I can't remember what it's called now. But things around compliance sit within Microsoft product called Purview. We're going to be looking at soon. So Entra does not look at, is part of a compliance ecosystem, but is the native product, but the native use case is to ensure that identity users, computers are protected with the technology we've mentioned, like with multi-factor authentication, conditional access and stuff. So it's more I would probably classify it as a more protective and mitigating tool rather than a compliance tool as such. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. What I understand is that it's core security.
Yeah, it's core identity and access management security.
Okay.
Don't forget, it's identity and access management security. Does that make sense, guys?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go to the next piece of thing, which is the threat protection side of things, the SDR. I would like us to paint a scenario quickly, because I like scenarios a lot. Let's imagine that let's imagine that we're all working in an environment as such. And maybe I use myself as a scapegoat here. I was a bit naughty. I went to a malicious website because I like to get like free things, for example. So there's this free thing that popped on. So get this free key. So I clicked on the link, and then Unfortunately, I downloaded a malware. So listen to the use case here. Can you mute yourself, please? Can you mute yourself? Okay. I can hear myself echo. Okay, thank you. So I downloaded a malicious file, and as such, something happened on my computer system, and I can see the same on maybe 2 other people on the score system, and it says pay for ransomware. So sorry, your device, your files have been encrypted. Pay for ransom. What do you think is responsible for that situation? I'm trying to see if I can. What do you think is responsible for that situation? Try to bring up the chart in the. What do you think is responsible? Sorry, let me take that back. I'll take this here. Sorry, I'll bring that back. Apologies for that. So I've just asked a question. What do you think is responsible for that situation? Cool. Somebody said they downloaded malware, the ransomware and stuff like that. Cool. Now, you are right on from what you said. So let's now think forward. What do you think would allow us to respond to that particular situation that I, as a person, downloaded something that's caused the business a problem? What do you think would come in as a mitigated action quickly to like, oh, I want to. So somebody said endpoint protection, that's cool. Containment, yeah, that's cool. Let's move on. What do you think would respond to that? There's no wrong or right answer, by the way. I'm trying to ensure that we follow through so that we understand what we are doing. Backup, yeah, that's true. That's fine. What do you think would help us quickly, separate the system? Yeah, that's cool. Isolate the system. Yeah, everyone is right, and I'm really excited about that. Now, Microsoft has a set of tools that does that piece of work in a coordinated response. And someone in the chat I just said the name, Microsoft Defender. The job of Defender is to provide a coordinated response. So if you remember the use case I said, I went on a malicious site. First and foremost, that site should have been blocked by a security tool. The tool that does that is the Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. And you can see it on the screen. Okay. And then let's imagine that Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps was not part of the tool stack, that we've not implemented a policy in there. The actual virus was downloaded on my computer. Something within Microsoft should have done that, which is the Microsoft Defender for endpoints. Okay. Let's now imagine that the endpoint wasn't there. Something should have stopped me from putting my credentials, or should have stepped in or should have said, oh, by the way, Dele, you shouldn't be putting your username and password in something. That should have been done by Microsoft Defender for Identity. Okay. Let's now imagine that maybe the link came through an email. Okay. Something should have blocked that email from the onset, which is Microsoft Defender for Office 365. Okay. And so on and so forth. There are other Microsoft Defender stack, but I will tell you for a fact, take a screenshot of this as well. And as you move forward, you would demystify. But let's focus on the Microsoft 365 Defender side of things. I'll probably touch on Microsoft Defender for Cloud at some point, but so far so good. Yeah.
Sorry, would you be able to share the slide with them after the class so that instead of them taking screenshots, they can just focus on the class?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. I mean, I'll drop the slide. Anyways,
Alpha.
Please, if you wanna just mute yourself, thank you. So I've painted a scenario for you now. So the whole idea is that the Microsoft Defender is a coordinated tool that looks at 4 or 5 what we call attack surfaces. What I mean by attack surface is anything that is this word is very funny. Anything that is open to vulnerability. So it could be through your endpoint, which is your devices, through the user itself, putting their credentials in the malicious side, through the application that users are accessing, through the network, or through your infrastructure. So Microsoft has a piece of security tool amongst all of this set of resources. And that is why, if we think back on our zero trust strategy, that is why the assumption of breach comes in. Because Microsoft knows that I would assume breach at any damn time. Pardon my French. I would assume breach at any time. As such, I would recommend that you implement the Defender suite across any of your security ecosystem. Does that make sense, folks? Does that make sense? If you think you're lost,
Yes.
cool. Now, the SDR side of things, I'm going to show us the portal soon. The SDR side of things, previously we used to look at what we call EDR. In fact, it started with antivirus. I'm sure when I used to live in Lagos, I used to go to what's that place called again? Tinubu, to go and buy CDs that have us antivirus that button, and then it's going to clean up the mess of my computer and stuff like that. The same methodology still works till date. What has now changed is that it's just more like the deployment aspect and also the functionality of these two sets, because threat landscape has changed over time. We are now seeing more sophisticated threats in the wild, and then as such, they've been bet of multiple different products. What's that word? Multiple different product sophistication. And that is why we are looking at stuff like the SDR side of things. What SDR does is that giving that extended detection and response capability across your identity, across your email, across your endpoint, across your application, across your data, and across your cloud workloads. To succeed in this whole conversation, you need to understand your basic cloud computing, your software as a service, your infrastructure as a service, and platform as a service. I will not deep into that, but I want us to understand that the extended detection and response is part of the Microsoft Zero Trust strategy for assumption of breach, because at the end of the day, billions of data is generated over time. People are sending emails back and forth. People are logging into multiple systems. So you need multiple signals to actually help correlate all of this communication and ensuring that the threat or the potential malicious artifacts are being identified and are dealt with in a quick and fast manner using multiple machine learning capabilities and AI. Somebody's got their hands up. Is that for a question, or is that for a question? I think the person that's got their hands up is Chigozie. Chigozie, if you're not asking a question, you want to put your hands down. Okay, I'm just going to lower your hand for you. Okay. Any question from what I've said so far? Any question, guys? Okay, I would assume silence is coding. So let's go and see what the portal looks like. But before we do that, I want to please show us what the component of what we're going to be seeing so that we follow the flow. So within Microsoft Defender, we'll be seeing stuff around the Microsoft Defender for endpoint, which is basically the native Microsoft antivirus anti-malware agents, stuff around EDRs, and stuff around the entire Defender suite. We're also going to be seeing stuff around, we're going to be seeing stuff around Defender for Office 365, which is basically for the email. We're going to be seeing stuff around Defender for Clouds, which is for the cloud application. We're currently going to be seeing stuff around the entire portal in terms of the Defender suite. As we have seen before, everything in Microsoft has very similar URL. Let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Can you see the screen?
Yes.
What can you see?
I can see you typing on Google, security.microsoft.com.
So that is the URL to go into the Microsoft Security Defender portal. As you can see, I said something at the beginning. Who can remember about Microsoft styling in terms of their UI?
All their links have Microsoft.com.
That's one. What about the UI? What did I say about it?
All menus are listed on the left-hand side.
All the functionalities are on the left.
Cool. So the same thing follows. And there's another thing as well. It's written in plain English. So no technical jargons. Does that make sense? Okay. In the home page, and I also mentioned to you, they will only provide you with multiple dashboards giving you different things. The first thing that comes to mind is the secure score. My boss loved this a lot because when I joined the organization, they had a secure score of 42%, and I've successfully managed the secure score to about 90 something. But this is a test tenant anyway. So I've built everything across the data sources, identity, data, devices, and app. And we also have some resources in Azure as well. So we are probably consuming Defender for Cloud, secure score. But the first thing that comes to mind really, what is secure score? Secure score is basically a security initiative that allows you to see the security posture of your environment. Everything still sits within the zero trust conversation. What is the secure score of your user's identity? How well are they performing? Have you implemented the best practice? What is the secure score for the data? How well are data protected? Do you have your labels? Do you have your DLP? Do you have your classification? Do you have this? Do you have that? How well is your endpoints? Do you have you deployed the right sensors for them? Do you have your AV policies? Do you have your firewall policies? Do you have your device control policies? Have you onboarded them to Defender? How well is your app? Are you granting you have some permission consent check regularly? Do you have things around ensuring that you remove admin consent from users? Do you ensure that you are looking at APIs that applications are using to connect to your application to your environment? Are you looking at all those nice stuff to ensure that you are baking security into your conversation? So for the first glance, from a C-level conversation, they are not really bothered about the technical jargons. They just need data to help them understand how well the organization is progressing in terms of security. And the secure score does that for them. So this secure score is basically something for the senior level stakeholders to look at. But the core areas within Microsoft Defender suite is there's a whole lot in here. So like I said, everything has so much that you could look into, but we'll try to touch as much as we can. So the first one that comes to mind is the endpoint side of things. Within the endpoint side of things, we have the vulnerability management dashboard. Basically, this is a dashboard that shows you all of the vulnerability within your organization. I'm sure some of us understand what vulnerabilities are, right? I'll help you. You know,
Yes.
Okay, somebody wants something. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's called, we can call it weakness in systems.
Cool. A good example is before you go to the hospital with malaria, you had a torn net in the house and mosquito came in. So the mosquito that came through the torn net is because you had a vulnerability in your house, which is the net that got torn, which allows the mosquito to come in and then bite you. The same thing with software product. Vulnerability is just like a hole in the software, which the threat actors, in this case mosquitoes, would come and take advantage of. So as such, you need to then have good vulnerability visibility, which allows you to plan how to patch your vulnerability so that threat actors cannot use that medium to infiltrate into your system. Simple and short. So we have a vulnerability dashboard. So we have a lot of things around the remediation, the recommendation action, the inventory, and the weaknesses and the event timeline. Is whatever I say is what it means. Recommendation is how you can patch the vulnerability. So if you click through, it's going to give you list of recommendations to take, what you need to do to patch the vulnerability, and you can see there's a lot of information in there. So this is my tenant. I'm not doing so well. I'm not proud of that, but it's an environment where I just come to play. So I've got lots of vulnerability flying around. The remediation side of things is just basically assigning remediation of those vulnerabilities in this dashboard to a specific set of users or engineers in the organization to help, clean up the mess. So a good example, you think about it as your broken net, you need to call a carpenter. And this is where you assign the job to the carpenter to fix the net. But in this case, you assign the job to someone to come and fix the vulnerability. Inventory is very important. You cannot clean up what you don't know. So you need to know the amount of softwares that are running on multiple servers, the vulnerable component and stuff like that. So that allows you to know if truly you need those software, because at the end of the day, there's no point patching the software that is not useful in your organization. So you can find a way to remove them so that it cleans up the environment. Of course, weakness. This is where the problem is, where the problem that affects your organization and the entire vulnerability that's been seen in the wild. So you'll find this in Microsoft within the vulnerability dashboard. We're not doing so much. We're not going to configuration as such, but layman terms, not biggie, we're just fine. We have something around the partners API. So I'm sure some of we've got some developers in-house here. So basically, APIs are application program interface. It allows us to connect to different services to either maybe get information or receive information. I'll keep it very, 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 very plain. So with API, you can connect to different set of product services and whatnot, so that you can have like that server to server communication across the board. Simple and short. So if you need to bring in other products into Defender so that you can have some level of visibility or communication, you can do that through API. And then you can look at the connected application here. We've got a couple of applications that I don't have any, unfortunately, but you can connect to Microsoft API because they've got lots of APIs, and you can also connect to other products and stuff like that. You can, try to see the way it works. Any question, folks? If I'm too fast, let me know. If I'm too slow, better for us. I'm just looking at the chat. Okay, I think I'll come back to that. Now, the other thing is the configuration manager. This is basically a part that allows you to set up your endpoint security policies. This is where the magic happens. As far as I know, all organization has about 4 different set of product and device type that they use. The mobile devices, which could be Android and iOS, Windows, Mac, or Linux environments. And as such, Microsoft gives you the liberty to configure security policies across all of these platforms, so you can manage the security policies from here. That's all about it from the endpoint side of things. What about emails? We spoke about emails at first. When I went into my email and I clicked on the malicious link. Within Microsoft, we've got a lot of email security components. We've got stuff around the overview, which is basically telling us the influx of emails that we've got and based on the threads that has been associated with the email. So Basically, every email you send back and forth in your organization goes through what we call a SEG, which is the secure email gateway. But in this case, it's Microsoft. So when it gets to Microsoft, it goes through what we call a specific set of checks, whether it is from the connection filter or down to the content filter, and goes to the other part. But within Microsoft, we have what we call Microsoft Defender for Office, which is more like the post-remediation tool. What does this do really? It looks out for emails that have got malicious artifacts, bad links, bad attachments, removes it from the email, and then deliver the email to quarantine. So within this place, we can set up multiple policies, such as stuff like your anti-spam policy, so anti-phishing policy. I'm sure some of us know what phishing is. When somebody tells you, oh, click on this link to get £50 credit, you probably will feel like, oh, why am I getting £50 credit? Mind you, you click on the link and it takes you to a Microsoft login page to provide your credentials to claim your token or to claim your gift. That's someone trying to fish you. Or maybe somebody sends an email that looks like me and say, oh, this is Oladele Soares. I trained you 3 years ago or 4 years ago and stuff like that. And I'm calling because something happened to my phone and I was wondering if you got some Bitcoin that you can share with me. That's someone trying to impersonate me. So you can create policies around anti-phishing policy to help you, to help you look out for such phishing techniques and such. And within the phishing policy, you can do stuff around impersonation. You can do stuff around so I've got a few policies that I've created here. So you can look at stuff around the phishing thresholds, the impersonation protection, the domain impersonation protection. You can also look at stuff around what policy should be applied based on specific set of actions that have been found. Conscious of time because we've got about 30 minutes. It's quite a lengthy one, double. Aside that, we could also look at the anti-spam policy. I'm sure some of us receive emails that looks like spam, that someone you don't even know them and stuff like that. So within Microsoft Stack, we do have some anti-spam policy. Anti-spam policy, if you remember the story I gave to you about me clicking on a malicious link from a malicious attachment from my email, anti-spam policy would have stepped in to remove that particular malicious artifact from my inbox and stuff. And that's about it, really, from an email standpoint. The other things that also comes to mind is, quarantine and all of those nice stuff, but I'll probably skip that for a conversation that requires technical deep dive. Now, there's other things you want to look out for, the cloud outside of things. Remember, I told you I was being naughty. I went to a malicious site because I wanted something cheap, which I think, or maybe I want to go and play Naira, for example, and you shouldn't allow that in an organization. So as part of the zero trust strategy, you want to assume breach as such. So you don't want your users going to specific sites that are not sanctioned. So with Defender for Cloud Apps, you can create what we call specific app protection policy, not protection policy. You can create specific policies within Defender for Cloud Apps to manage the session of the user. So think about Defender for Cloud App as the native SASE product that allows you to manage the user's session when they are trying to access cloud applications, like maybe, for example, G Suite or Naira site and stuff. So you can manage all of those things and then ensure that users do not connect to such sites. So I'll give you a good example. So within the cloud apps, I can do a cloud discovery, technically. So that allows me to see all the applications that all my users are accessing. And sometimes you might be wondering when IT sends you an email to say, oh, we noticed that you're trying to access particular site. Why are you going to that site? You're like, why did they know? They will know because you're accessing from the corporate device one. Second of all, your session is being monitored by Defender for Cloud Apps. So that's a good use case for that. So I've spoken about two things here. I've spoken about endpoints, I've spoken about emails, and I've spoken about cloud apps. Within the Microsoft Defender ecosystem, that is basically the product that we need to look out for. This is taking its own time to load. But one other thing that's also important, Defender for Identity. Within Defender for Identity, basically, this is actually a centralized defensive tool that allows you to, monitor hybrid environments, whereby you can monitor if something has gone. So in security, something we call lateral movement. When the threat actors compromise the system, what they want to do first is to move laterally in your organization from one user to a domain user. And for us to be able to monitor that, we would implement what we call the Defender for Identity, using specific set of configuration within your on-premise infrastructure. So this allows us to, first and foremost, to monitor multiple malicious login within an hybrid / cloud user, and then that informs all of the user activity into Microsoft Defender. And then based on the responses that based on the security policies that we've got, then a response comes in. If you go back to our initial conversation on Zero Trust, you would see that all of the things we have been discussing is around either verifying explicitly least privilege as also assumption of breach. And that's where the core principle of the Microsoft security product comes in. And some of us start thinking like a ninja now, because in our head we are now thinking, oh, okay, so we have to protect the emails using Defender for Office. You have to protect the identities in Defender for Identity and Entra. We have to protect endpoints in Defender for Endpoint. We have to ensure that we protect cloud using Defender for Cloud Apps and all those nice stuff. Are we seeing it the way I'm seeing it, or am I just making a different? Are we seeing it the way I'm seeing it? If you are following me, if you give it thumbs up. If you are lost, give me thumbs down. If you're lost, if you're following, give it a thumbs up. If you're cool. Oh, Christopher is lost. Don't worry. The session is recorded. I have my number in the chat. You can give me a shout on whatever I think is wrong. I can always address that. Oh.
Oladele, can I chime in a bit here so that
Yes.
So everything that our trainer has been taking so far is just an overview of the solutions. In this particular bootcamp, we're not going to cover this particular one, but the Bootcamp 2.0, which will be coming up maybe May or June next year, will cover all those ones. So for this Bootcamp is the first part that I cover, which is the Entra ID. That is what we're covering. So in case you're over the area, you're thinking, how can I learn all these things? You're going to cover them in that Bootcamp 2.0. But we want to focus on the main, the main perimeter, which is identity. That's why Entra is what we'll be covering throughout this particular bootcamp. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I hope I haven't gone off track.
No. You haven't actually. It's part of, they need to have that overview at the fundamental level. So
you want to discuss Entra, whatever, you have to know. Anyways, guys, honestly, this was me a couple of years ago. Like, I'm just having a lot of headache. I don't even understand what I'm doing. So I will tell you what will work for me. There's an 100 rule in anything you're learning that you would not understand anything. But if you are consistent, you start putting the puzzles together and it's going to make sense. So keep that on your, is it left or right hand? Don't eat it about with it. It's very important. Okay, identity is all set. We are aware there's something like this. All I really want is from you guys is just to be aware. Information overload can really make you probably would not be interested, but just be aware of, okay, Microsoft has Defender. I don't really know what those things are, but I know Defender is part of the Microsoft security stack. Oh, well and good. Somebody says Defender for Identity in the next 2 weeks, you probably remember, oh, somebody said this to me. And that's how it works. We've spoken about identity. Let's now look at, it makes sense to have all of these things in this nice overview and stuff, but what if one of us gets employed as a security person? And I want us to ask a question here. what if one of us gets employed as a security person? How do you think it will make sense for you to be able to manage all the information that comes from Defender for Identity, Entra, Defender for Cloud? How do you think it's going to make sense for us to be able to look at it and say, yeah, there's a security incident? Can anybody put something in the chat? What you think you would prefer to have as a security person? If you don't get the question, I can rephrase it. So let's imagine that, okay, somebody's saying looking at the dashboard. So I'll rephrase. So let's imagine that we have all of this nice tools, Defender for Identity, Defender for Office 365, Defender for Cloud Apps. How do you think it would make sense for you? You got hired to work as a security analyst. How would you think it makes sense for you to be able to see what the solution is giving to you so that you can triage an incident? So somebody saying same, so go, you can inspire. You guys are right. But within Microsoft Defender, there's something we have here: investigation and response. So basically, all the set of policies that we've set within Microsoft Defender would either generate an alert or create an incident. An alert is to tell an admin there's something going on, there's fire on the mountain. The incident then captures the pictures of the alert. So if I go into my incident portal, I've got a couple of incidents that I've actually triaged when I was testing some stuff. Hopefully it comes up so you can see the beauty of it. So you'll see at the end of the day, like it's not magic. It's taking its precious time. Is Microsoft down today or something? Let's refresh. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to ensure that I'm conscious of time. We've got 30 minutes to finish, but hopefully, yeah, you can see this is a good use case. I have a set of alerts that I've generated over time. Within my incident page, there's something we call the attack story. The attack story tells us exactly what happened. So let's look at this. We have, so you can see, Kafi Asuba shared a file, internal communication portfolio, PowerPoint to OneDrive for Business. So, and within the security alert, it's telling me that it violated a security policy of full name. It's a security policy that somebody has created, but an alert has been triggered and it's triggered a high severity alert. So within Defender, at the end of the day, when you configure all your security tooling and whatnot, it comes into the investigation and response portal, where you can then carry out your security investigation and then carry out a response. The person that said SIM and SWA is not wrong. The person that says SIM and SWA is not wrong, but we would make sense of that in a bit. It's just an advanced log injection tool, as I would call it, to make it simple. But the whole idea is that amongst whatever you implement, you need somewhere to ship the logs to, somewhere to ship the alerts to, so that the security team can work on it. So amongst this, after all said and done, from what I've said, I think we have a basic understanding of what the Microsoft Defender suite looks like. So it looks after our email, looks after our identity, looks after our data, looks after our application, and of course, ingest logs are from our application as well. Any question on what this product does that I haven't shared? Any question whatsoever? Any question? Okay, I'll take silent as golden. I will then move to the next piece of work. We've got a few things to go over. So we've looked after Defender on the Microsoft Defender 365 side of things. We did not discuss Defender for Cloud Apps. We did not discuss Defender for servers. These are going to be deep down technical conversation. So probably an advanced level 2 or 3. We've looked at EDRs, SDRs, and the likes, and I think I've explained what an SDR does. From what you can see at the end of the day, it's bringing different signals together and taking incident response using the Microsoft Defender bits. Within Microsoft Defender for endpoints, we've looked at these are the core things that are within the Microsoft Defender for endpoints, stuff like the antivirus policy, EDR, which is the endpoint detection and response, attack surface reductions, and a lot of nice stuff. We've looked at exposure management, things around that I mentioned to you around the vulnerability and whatnot. And of course, the workloads that you can apply those policies to: Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, and iOS. Now, we've also touched on the Defender for Office 365 side of things. So basically, that looks after the email side of things. So we've spoken about the anti-phishing, anti-malware, the real-time protection, and all those nice stuff. So Defender does have the capability to do that. So it looks after not just your devices, which is here, but it looks after your email as well, which is very, very important, because at the end of it, if you look at the scenario I played for you, you'll see that either a user is clicking on a malicious link from the email, or they are going on a malicious site to download content. But the most important thing is that at every forefront of your interaction with the cloud, you have the Microsoft Defender suite doing something, whether from the email, endpoint, data, application, and network side of things. So I want us to refer back to our zero trust strategy. Verify explicitly using the identity, assumption of least privilege using the PIM. Probably we'll discuss it in details, but least privilege is important, and of course, assumption of bridges in the Microsoft SDR or SIM and whatnot. So at the end of the day, I want your mind to start thinking of how some of these products. Can you see my screen, by the way? Hello, have I lost the crowd? I guess tired. Hello.
We can see your screen. Your screen. We can see your screen.
Can see your screen. Screen is visible.
Yeah, have I lost you guys? Are you guys tired?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay. Cool. So that being said, we've also looked at the Defender for Identity, and I've explained how that looks after stuff within our on-premise infrastructure. You know, and we've also looked at Defender for Cloud Apps, which is basically app governance, managing cloud application, and all of this nice stuff. So within the Defender side of things, it's evident that for every attack surface, we have a Microsoft product looking at it. Does that make sense, folks? Can you hear me?
Yes,
It
I can hear
does.
you.
So that being said, we're going to move forward because we're trying to buy time. For the Defender for Cloud Apps, for Defender for Cloud side of things, there's also a native tool. Maybe we've got some, I don't know how much slide we've got. I think we've got some time here. I'll probably show you something within the Microsoft stack as well that does offer the Defender for Cloud things. So I'll paint a quick scenario here. That sits in Azure. There are specific things that there are some fundamentals to this. For you to get the beauty of all of this, you have to understand your cloud computing fundamentals. It's very, very important, because all those things would be technical jargons without are going to be technical jargons without understanding fundamentals. Well, I would explain something to you. Look at this use case, for example. Let's imagine that we are here, we are just native users. So we now have a dedicated application development team where they are the one building the application that we use in our day-to-day business and whatnot. And this application development guys, they are in a very special place that is not the same as ours. So we are just native users. We come into the office in the morning, I might get my tea and coffee, and then just sit on my laptop, go for meetings and stuff. But we have some dedicated developers where their days are just to build and break infrastructure, spin up availability of our payment gateway and stuff like that. Now, they consume all the things in Microsoft that is not sitting in M365, but sits in Azure. So a good example is, for example, they have to spin up a couple of virtual machines or a couple of storages or a couple of virtual networks and stuff like that. But how do we ensure that there is security on all of these things? In the individual product or individual resource that they are spinning off, yeah, there is security in it, but the governance around it would be managed around the Microsoft Defender for Cloud side of things. And that is why we have the Defender for Cloud side of things, because within Defender for Cloud, every of your cloud resources is also assessed against the regulatory compliance side of things, and of course, gives you that same security posture overview. And Defender for Cloud doesn't just sit within Microsoft Azure, but it follows with other third-party cloud services like AWS, GCP, and the likes. So the whole idea is that Microsoft looks after anything within the cloud space, whether from a SaaS, which is the software as a service side of things, or whether for to an infrastructure, which is probably your VMs, your virtual machines and stuff like that, or even to your platform side of things, whether you are consuming things like SaaS, PaaS resources.
Cloud essentials.
You know, so you have an overview of all of this that you can implement security based on whatever you're consuming. So that's on Defender for Cloud. So there's a whole lot. In fact, one thing is you cannot know everything. That's very certain, you know, but you can have an idea so that when you get yourself in specific conversation, you can, you know, contribute as much as you can. Any question on that, folks?
No.
Cool. Fairman, we've got a couple of slides left. We're going to jump into Sentinel now. We can skip this one. Yeah, you should go for it, sir. You're not. Good afternoon, sir. You're not audible.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay, so my question is a little bit lengthy, but I want to break it down so that you could understand.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so imagine I am working for an organization, right? And I'm to manage their services, like their admin services and also their network. So am I going to manage their admin services using the Microsoft Entra? Then I will now manage their network using the Microsoft Network Defender or something like that. So what I'm asking is, some organizations will go there and the admin is on a different network. The staff is on a different network, and then the guests are also on a different network. Speaking from the point of the hospitality business, so we in the admin are on different networks, and the guests are also on a different network. And people who come and then go are also on a different network. So how do you manage the networks and then the admin services? Are you going to use Microsoft Entra like we spoke about?
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that question. The simple answer is no, you are not going to be consuming Microsoft resources for the network side of things. And the reason being that, I mean, it depends on how your infrastructure has been set up, but in the context of this conversation, the network conversation is not is not fully consumed unless you're using stuff like Microsoft's Global Secure Access. But from your use case, and I'll probably just answer, you probably have a different product completely. It could be your Fortinet firewall, or it could be your IPsense router, whatever, where you've done your network segmentation and stuff. managing their network access basically would not sit with Microsoft. Would sit with your network infrastructure, whether it is PFSense, FortiGate firewall, Sophos firewall, and the likes. Do you get what I mean? But what you would manage, what with your users, your IT admin, your guest is still going to be their identity, because something was allow them to authenticate in. In an hospitality environment, you don't want to give your guest user what's it called? Username and password, but you want them to be able to authenticate into the website so they can connect to the Wi-Fi. So you probably will be looking at stuff like what's that thing called? CIEM, or maybe a B2B that allows you to deploy a public-facing website where that you can still manage your authentication so that you can allow them access your resources. So we are not going to be looking into that as such because that's a network conversation. But from a user perspective, every user is still going to be managing Entra, regardless whether they are guests or corporate users stuff. What differentiates access is basically the least privileged conversation that we had.
Okay,
People should be given access to what they shouldn't be access to. And that's the same thing, even on your network infrastructure, your endpoint infrastructure, whatever. At the end of the day, Microsoft is just a product. There are other products like Microsoft. They do the same thing. What you need to understand is the fundamental. How does these things work? And then all the technical jargons will fall in place. Does that make sense?
Okay, so from my understanding of this is just the least privileges between staff in the organization where one can access a particular file and then another person can access a particular document based on their positions in the organization, right?
Yeah, exactly. So for every, if you think about the zero trust strategy, for everything that you do, there's something we called segregation of duty and network. You have to separate it, because I give you an example. If all of us is able to share our screen now and we can all talk at the same time, we will not hear ourselves, and that would collapse the meeting. So the same scenario, if everybody can walk into the medical lab and start performing their medical test, people will die. So the same ideology follows through in every use case that we find ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Okay, boss. Any question? We are very, very close. I think we've got.
I wanted to. Hello, can you hear me, please? Good evening.
Yes, please.
So I wanted to ask, what is the difference between the CIM and the SIM? I know that SIM is security operations center, but security center and event management. But what of the CIM that you talked about?
So that's it. That is a cross-domain. That is basically cross-domain identity and access management. SIM is for security, incident and event management. CIM is cross-domain identity. So think about it as a good use case is I don't know what the person that just spoke now rather. They have customers that need to access their public-facing websites. They need to create an account. And they need to also go through multi-factor authentication. Microsoft gives you that ability to, allow people access your public-facing website, create an account, and you can also manage those accounts within your Entra ID. So CIEM is basically for identity. SIM is just for managing security events and incidents. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfectly. It does. Now I understand better.
All right, folks. Sentinel, SIM, SOAR, the technical jargons is all done. Let's paint a quick scenario. All of us have successfully landed our cybersecurity role. Maybe Microsoft, somebody's working with AXA, somebody's working with whatever product as such. We have loads of security alerts. I'm talking in thousands of security alerts. Do you think it would make sense for one person to just sit down and just be looking after those alerts? And mind you, the alert is not just coming from Microsoft, it's coming from your firewall, it's coming from your server sitting in your VDC is coming from another subsidiary in America. You've got loads of alerts coming in. Do you think it would make sense? We've got 50 to about 12 more minutes. Hopefully I can finish up this. I'm sorry, guys. Do you think it would make, you don't think so, right? How do you think it would make sense for us to get those alerts together? Yeah. So the only way we can bring those alerts together is to find a way to ingest those alerts into a particular, I would say, data logging system. A SIEM is just basically a security alert database. Let's just put it that way, simple thing. And what that does is that it allows us to correlate all of our log from our different log sources into one single port so that we can create what we call detection rules or analytical rules or detection action or some actions based on specific set of use cases that we've seen. And as such, we can then trigger what we call security playbooks. What a security playbook is, a playbook is basically an instruction to follow when a security event happens. A simple example would be when somebody's account is compromised. What do? We lock out the users or we ask them to reset their password. But we can't manually manage this. We have to orchestrate it using specific automation, and that is where the SWA comes in. So the same collects the logs, ingest the logs, allows us to create detection rules and pattern and whatnot. And then we then have to orchestrate using our SWA, which allows us to carry out automation to say, oh, Dele has clicked on a malicious link, is actually accessing from China, blah, 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 blah. Orchestration, which is the SWA, then goes back to say, because of this set of signals that I've seen, Dele needs to go into a condition access policy that would block him from accessing Microsoft services, our services, which goes down to our zero trust conversation. Assumption breach, verifying explicitly, least privilege. So we can have a automated rule to say, if this set of signal matches, first and foremost, check if Dele has completed multi-factor authentication. Oh, yes, it did. That means that we has verified explicitly. But we are not so sure. At the point where this thing happened, we sure that Dele was a global admin. We need to take away that administrative role and require multi-factor authentication, least privilege. Because of the fact that we've seen multiple signals from different areas, we are not sure again. Let's block Dele. Dele gets added to an automated group that's got a condition access policy to block them. So if you look at that use case overall, it does explain the what's it called? The assumption, the entire zero trust strategy. I'll quickly show us what the Sentinel portal looks like because I'm just trying to ensure that we deal with time. So within Azure, we have the Sentinel. I think I started up my Sentinel instance up, but it's deleted. But I've played a few of them around this. I've played a few, but I've deleted my Sentinel instance. But this is what the Sentinel, portal looks like. If you have a live Sentinel environment, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to have like a dashboard that shows you security incidents and stuff. And as such, you can, you can move around things and have some automated rules in there. I don't want to really speed things up, but I would also touch on this last part, which is the data security part, purview. Let's think about a good scenario of, we've got 5 more minutes. Let's think about data. One of the things the threat actors are looking for is the data. And within Microsoft, that we call Microsoft Purview. The Purview is actually I think it's probably one of the biggest products in Microsoft. It allows us to, carry out 3 things: data security, data governance, and compliance and risk side of things. So say, for example, you have sensitive data that sits within your environment as such. Let's go down to Purview because it will probably be important. You're better off looking at the products. So within Purview, for us to go to Purview, we go to what called purview.microsoft.com. And like I said to you, the same thing still remains the same. Let's get started here. Everything in Microsoft is always on the left. Within Purview, we have quite a lot of things. We have your data loss prevention, we have your audit, you have your compliance manager, you have your information protection, you have your risk management, you have all of this nice stuff. And with Purview, it creates that data security posture management strategy or journey. So when you're coming start thinking of how can we protect our data, how can we ensure that our data is fully secure from end to end? How can we ensure that people that do not need to have access to our data are not accessing our data? Purview gives that kind of solution. A good example would be if you look at my presentation, I have a padlock here. I have something, a shield here. A shield here. Can you say shield here, guys? A shield here. It says public. If I click on this drop down, I have loads of labels. I've got general, internal, confidential, and restricted. Now, if I apply this, you can see it's giving me an information saying that this information contains sensitive information, it should not be shared outside, and stuff like that. What drives this configuration as such is Microsoft Purview. And within Purview, it sits basically in the information protection side of things, where you can define the kind of labels that you assign to documents, where you can define how the label is being applied to a document, where you can define how to apply label to your workloads like your Microsoft 365 Office application, your third-party cloud application, your databases, your storages, and all of this nice stuff. Apart from that, you can also do a search within your environment to find out where those sensitive data sits. So a good example would be in the UK, we have what we call PI data, personal identifiable information that sits within maybe GDPR or GDPR, for example, people's personal data. If for example, if MTN has a data breach today, the amount of money they are going to pay ICO would be a lot of money because they are housing a lot of sensitive information. But let's imagine that MTN in Nigeria does have a concrete data security posture management with Purview. They can implement what we call the Microsoft Information Protection to label that document based on the sensitive information that is within a document. They can implement a lot of DLP policies to look out for data exfiltration of any kind, whether it is from insider threats, whether it is from user mistake or even malicious artifact or malicious users. They can implement stuff around insider risk management that looks at what users are doing with all the sensitive data. They can even implement things like auditing and then, of course, carrying things like e-discovery and all of those nice stuff so that at the end of the day, if anything happens to the sensitive data, you know how to track it, you know how to revoke it, you know how to find out what happened, and you can then raise disciplinary action where necessary. There's another important thing within data itself. The whole purpose of data cycle is to ensure that you have a data life cycle, which means that don't keep too much data you don't need. Keep as much as you need and you ensure that you shred the rest of it. And that is where the conversation around stuff like retention policies, retention labels, and all of those things comes in. So within Purview, we have all of these functionalities, and it's quite important. I don't know if you can do about 5 more minutes just for us to round up and then ensure that we highlight some of this nice stuff. So within Purview, we have all of this functionality. We have stuff around preventing the data from leaving the business. We have stuff around applying protection on the data within the information protection side of things. We have stuff around discovering where those sensitive data sits. We have stuff around information barrier, which allows you to create barriers within people from, say, for example, you're working with the MI5. So MI5 is one of the most, I think is a security agency within the UK. You can't communicate with different departments because of the amount of sensitive information that they've got. So what you then have to implement is stuff like information barrier, whereby you can't chat them, you can't send an email to them. They only communicate to you when they want to communicate to you, and you are within the same organization. So with Purview, you can implement quite a lot of things. But the good thing is that there's so much to play around in this capacity, and Purview conversation is a whole different conversation whereby by the time you start going into all of these solutions that we've got here, you realize that there is a lot more than you can imagine. And that brings me to the last part of the Microsoft security stack, although it's not part of the M365 stack, but it's the endpoint side of it, which is Intune. This is not really part of the Microsoft M365 stack, but of course, at the end of the day, something must govern all of your policy deployment. Intune is responsible basically for your endpoint management as such. And on that note, unless there is something I haven't covered, but within the Microsoft M365 side stack that we looked at, okay, Intune, I haven't done that. If I quickly show you something. Sorry, I'm rushing just to ensure that we are quite on time. We are 1 minute late. So within Intune, we have Intune.microsoft.com. That's another portal there. Authenticate 25. Such. So this is another portal, Intune. All Intune does really is just to manage your devices, your endpoints. And your endpoint could be your mobile device, your what's it called? Your mobile device, your laptop, your servers, whatever. And this allows you to deploy applications to them, remove application from them, wipe them when they go missing, create Intune compliance policy, configuration policy, and the like. So you can see within Intune, we've got stuff like exploring Intune itself, the devices, the application you deploy, the endpoint security side of things, where you deploy security policies, the report within Intune, and so on and so forth. So if we cycle back at our initial conversation, which is at the beginning, you realize that this environment within Microsoft security platform covers everything that a user would have access to, whether it is you as a user, your username and password, your computer, the data you can access, the application you can access, the security information that comes from any potential data breach. And as such, everything in total from a user persona side of things. So I would say to you that as much as we try to squeeze this conversation within 2 hours, there's a lot more that we can discuss in this, but I want us to go home and take this information and probably do a bit more research into individual product components to demystify demystify the product and then understand what it does and then try to create like a puzzle. So, and as such, I would say if you could look at, I'll share this anyways, but look at this nice graph that I've got here or this image I've got here, and then try to see how it fits into the security portfolio. And as such, you realize that Microsoft covers almost everything I can think of within the cloud security space. On this note, guys, I'm going to end the call because we've run slightly above time, and I'm sure I like to keep the time as such. So if you have any question, you can, I'm available on the chat. You can drop me a chat. I'll be to, share more information as much as possible. If there's anything you're not sure about, give me a shout. I'll respond to you. I'm always very open. What else? If you have any question, yeah, you've got a question?
Hi, Oladele.
Yes, go for
I've got
it.
a question and also a recommendation. First of all, my question relates to Microsoft Entra ID. Now, when you were talking about Microsoft Entra ID earlier, you went to Microsoft Entra ID on Office or Microsoft.com, and you also went on Azure Cloud Platform.
Yep.
Now, the Microsoft Entra ID on Azure Cloud Platform is mainly used for Azure, right? So if I'm having users in Azure, I can only control the access and their authentication authorization of what they can do in Azure only. But does it also relate to what they can do on 365? Like if I create a user and I create a conditional access on 365, does it affect whatever they can do on Azure too, or I have to go to Azure separately to do that?
Good question. So before before the birth of Entra, everything was sitting in Azure. And let me share my screen so you understand. Guys, if you want to drop on the call, feel free to drop, but if you want to stay, that's fine. We just want to quickly address this question. So before
Sorry, before the drop off, I just have a quick announcement for them so that anyone that wants to drop off can drop off. Yeah, so everything that our trainer has been saying, you don't need to overthink it. Like you said, basically you take it a step at a time. Next week Saturday, I'll be handling the session, and it's going to be part of my session is going to actually share my story, how I got into cloud security, right? So that you'll see like a practical step-by-step or process, how I tackle each of those products, basically. Then for the Microsoft Purview that you mentioned, there's a session that we had today. It's a session that I actually organized. So some of you are on the session, Security Compliance Corner. So the goal of that session is to cover everything, all the 15 solutions in Microsoft Purview. So that session we've covered two so far. So every last Saturday of the month, 2 to 4, we had one today. So if you can join that session to learn about Microsoft Purview. Then for Microsoft Intune, our sister community, there's also another community I'm also a co-lead, the Nigerian Self community. So one of their plan is to cover Microsoft Intune. So you can get hands-on experience from that particular platform, because we are not planning to cover Intune in a particular community, right? However, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, we've had some session when we went through is it 500. So they're on our YouTube channel. So just type Microsoft Defender for Cloud. You see stuff there that makes sense, that at least you want to get an idea of what Microsoft Defender for Cloud is all about. Then for every other thing he has mentioned, apart from the Entra ID, we're not going to treat it in this particular bootcamp, like I mentioned earlier. We'll be treating that in the subsequent bootcamp, that the one that happened, the second bootcamp. But here we just want to focus on Entra ID. Yeah, so that's the information I have for everyone. So in case you're interested in any of this events, any of this community resources, I'm happy to share with us. Thank you. Sorry about that, Haladu. You can go ahead.
That's all right. Yeah.
Just to come again with that name, the second community.
So there is Nigeria Microsoft 365 community. I'll drop the link in the chat in case you want to join. I'll drop the link in the chat.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, folks. Just your question. So before Entra, before the birth of Entra, we had everything in Azure when it comes to identity and access management, which is Entra ID. So it used to be somewhere here. So basically, Microsoft then decided to move Entra into a different product of its own, and then allow it to stand on its own. So go back to the question. The same Entra that you can see here is the same that we have in this portal. But for you to get a full flesh of the functionality, you have better have doing it in Entra, and is responsible for both the identity and access management of M365 workload, which is the portal.office.com.
Okay.
Which is portal.office.com and Azure. So Entra here manages everything, whether it is M365 portal or Azure portal. Entra manages the identity and access management side of things for it. Does that answer your question?
It answers perfectly. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other question, folks? I can still stay with us for another 2-3 minutes before I jump off.
How do we reach out to you, just in case we have Because for me, for example, I've already created a free trial account for the what's it called? The E3. I created a free trial account which I've been playing around with for a while now. But there are times that when one gets stuck with one or two issues, like how do we reach out to you in terms of those?
I'm in the